Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Monday, June the 16th. And as we like to do once a week, we'll be chatting with our good friend George Rodriguez from San Antonio. George, welcome. It's always great to have you.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Well, George, here's an anniversary for you. I'm sure you remember this. Watergate will be 53, 52. It'll turn 53. The break-in, that is the break-in. The actual break-in that set off the whole thing will be 53 June 17th or Tuesday. And I'm sure it's another year to get another morality rant from the media about how this was the most amazing moment in the history of civilization. But look, there were some mistakes that President Nixon made. I'm not going to deny that, but anyway. But the reason I bring this up, George, is because I have a funny feeling that Watergate or the Watergate scandal may have a challenge for first place for the worst scandal. Well, I don't know about that. Teapot Dome was pretty bad too. I understand that was a pretty bad one, and there's probably others that I may not be remembering. But I have a feeling this AutoPen scandal with the famous AutoPen is going to be a pretty big one too. They seem to be gathering the information, and I think it's going to be really nasty, this AutoPen scandal, because what we're going to prove, and again, this is just a guess on my part. I don't have all the information, but I think we're going to find out that there were people acting on their own in the White House, George.
Yeah, I think. I think that is going to be the sad situation that we're going to see, the very dangerous situation that we're going to see, and how quickly we find all of this out and sort it out is going to depend on how quickly people begin to turn on each other. We already are seeing folks jumping off ship and literally jumping off the Democratic Party. We are seeing people who are writing books in an effort to try to justify themselves and distance themselves. I think this is going to be pretty bad. I agree. It's going to be one of the worst, one of the worst situations, one of the bigger scandals that we have seen coming out of Washington. And I, for one, think it's going to be very deserving of people who were very arrogant,
right,
and who are very, very self-serving.
That's right. No, I think you're right about that. But I have an idea, George. You and I ought to write a book, and we ought to call it. We should call it "All the President's AutoPens."
Yeah, there you go. I think that would be very good.
That would be a good title.
Because apparently there was more than one.
There was certainly, I guess there was one AutoPen, but more than one person.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's only one AutoPen, right? I believe in the White House. There's only one. Maybe there's two. I don't know. Maybe.
Well, I'm not sure if there. I never saw anything other than one in operation.
Okay.
And
well, I'm sure they have a plan B, just like with Air Force One.
They
have with Air Force One, they have a twin plane.
Mm-hmm.
That they fly in the event that they have to use two of them.
But having access to it was definitely something that you didn't play around with.
No, I agree, and I just think that to me it's an outrageous scandal. I mean, if any way you look at it, it's an outrageous scandal to have had that happen. And I think you're right. I think it's going to blow up, and it's going to blow up because a bunch of people are going to try to do the CYA, and they're going to cover their what, and they're just going to throw. I think they're going to throw Joe Biden under the fire so fast that poor Biden is going to wonder, what in the world happened. Assuming
I want to see what Jill has to say about it too.
Well,
because Jill could have been one of those culprits.
Well, that's right. That's right. And I also think that, with all due respect to President Biden, and I sincerely mean this, with all due respect, I don't think he was on top of it all. I don't think the elevator went up to the top floor, as they say. And I think it's very, very possible that he didn't really know everything that was being done for him. And I'm not trying to defend him, but I'm trying to be fair, because I think a lot of people used him. And who it was, we're going to find out. But I think I do believe some people, like you say, there's a John Dean somewhere in this group. Remember John Dean? There's a John Dean somewhere in this group who's going to crack it open, I think. And there's an Alexander Butterfield. He was the one. Alexander Butterfield is one of those names that most people wouldn't know. Maybe you probably know, but Alexander Butterfield is one who broke the story about the tapes in the White House.
Yep.
So the two people who nobody knew anything about when the investigation, well, John Dean, everybody knew was in the White House staff, but nobody in the country knew who John Dean was, and certainly a lot less Alexander Butterfield. And yet those two men became the principal figures in blowing up the whole Watergate scandal.
And I remember, I
go
remember
ahead.
because that was the first time that I ever went to Washington as an intern.
Wow.
When the scandal started to break. And I remember very clearly that people pointed the fingers quickly to John Dean and Butterfield and saying that those were traitors, that they were just rats jumping off a ship.
But especially John Dean.
It was a very interesting time.
It was. And, for some of us, I remember watching, it was kind of a crazy time in comparison, George, because you didn't have all the cable outlets you have now. So basically you had the three networks and some places PBS, but that wasn't always running like it does now either. So it was really the three networks who were showing these Watergate hearings. And all I remember was women in the country were calling the TV stations, telling them to put their soap opera back because, you had all these hearings. And what was the name of the Democrat senator from North or South Carolina who was the head of the committee? It was I can't think of it. Howard Baker was
Howard Baker.
He was the Republican senator.
Yeah, he was on the Republican side.
But I'm trying to remember the guy's name on the Democrat side. He had that very strong accent, Democrat. But it was but anyway, I do believe that this has the potential not to hurt Biden, because I think nobody's going to go after Biden. But I think they need to go after the people around him who perpetrated this, because I think that was a great injustice on the American people that was done by these individuals. I will say this, that as bad as Nixon was, we know that he signed the executive order for affirmative action, and we know he signed the law for Title IX. So nobody questions that he signed these things or understood what he was signing, George.
No, you didn't have that problem with Nixon.
No, Nixon was sharp. Nixon was
very, very sharp.
And he was sharp to the last day. I remember when he gave that farewell speech in the White House, when he left and Ford came in. So he was sharp all the way. But anyway, so
Sam Irwin. I remember
Sam Irwin. That's it. Sam. Yeah. Good old Sam.
Sam.
Just here. Are you looking at his biography? When did he pass away? I'm just curious.
No, I just spotted his name here.
Yeah. No, it's Sam Irwin. That's exactly right. Yeah. He was the Democrat in charge of what they used to call the Joint Committee, I guess. It was Sam Irwin and Howard Baker,
right?
The Republican from Tennessee, who were
and in those days, the Democrats were a little bit more middle of the road, should we say, than they are today.
I don't think Sam Irwin would be invited to a convention today.
No, they wouldn't invite him to chair anything today.
No, he would be. The truth is that Sam Irwin would be a Republican today.
Probably. Yeah.
Probably. It's just like Lloyd Bentsen. A lot of people talk about Lloyd Bentsen. Lloyd Bentsen, when he came into politics, being a Democrat was the only option you had in Texas. But if he was coming into politics today, he'd be, I have no doubt that he would be a Republican. He was a very conservative Democrat, to say the least. Well, let's go to the next big topic, the big topic of the week, George, and that's these marches. I bet, George, didn't know, George. I bet you didn't know.
I missed those.
Well, but I bet you didn't know that we had a king. How did you miss that? How did you miss that?
I did not.
As well connected and well educated as you are, how did you miss that we had a king in the country? I was like sitting there watching these marches and watching these people being interviewed. And I'm saying to myself, man, where did I miss this? Where did I miss the story that we have a king? We don't have a White House. We don't have an elected president. We have a king. How did I miss that? So maybe you can fill me in, George. How did I miss it?
Well, I mean, again, it shows the shallowness of their thinking.
That's right.
It shows that, they are quick to scream about that we don't respect the Constitution. Well, apparently they don't respect a duly done election.
Right.
The
That's for
election
sure.
was 77 million people
Right.
voted for Trump. It was the majority of America that voted for Trump. Yet they want to overturn it. They want to kick him out.
Hmm. Yeah.
They discredit him. Well, apparently 77 million people in America, which is the majority of the voters, liked him and voted for him. I went out and did some interviews during the march on Saturday, and I asked that question, and virtually all of them deflected and went
Right.
to something else and making some ridiculous. The thing that I also want to mention is in the aftermath of all of these marches that took place everywhere, here in San Antonio and in Harris County, and I believe in Dallas as well, the newspaper, the media, and the leadership was quick to thank the protesters for not being violent. On the surface, again, that sounds very, very nice. But why are we rewarding people for maintaining law and order? I mean, that's something that should be normal.
Right.
If
I think
anything,
the editorial should have thanked the governor
exactly.
for saying
Or
ahead
they
of
should,
time.
you know, or they. I mean, thanking it's like thanking kids for not tearing up the house when you've left.
Right.
This is, you know, they are normalizing bad behavior.
Right. Kind of reminds me of a story. Reminds me of a story when I was in high school that one of our teachers got sick, so they brought in this very young woman to be the substitute teacher. I think she was already a teacher, but she came in. She was extremely attractive, which of course had a bunch of 16-year-old boys thinking about you know what. But anyway, so she came in, and the assistant principal, after after the regular teacher came back a few days later, said, "Well, I want to thank all of you for behaving so nice with our substitute teacher." And it's funny. I had the same reaction that you had about the marches. I say, "Oh, yeah, you're thanking us because we didn't tear up the substitute teacher. I mean, you're not supposed to tear up a teacher. You're supposed to respect them,
Yeah,
But
right.
but it is interesting to me, George. It is interesting to me that how when you look at these marches in places like Texas and places like Florida and lots of others. I mean, there were people marching, but I don't think this was the success that they were expecting. That's just my
No,
gut feeling. I don't have the numbers to prove it, but my gut feeling is that they were expecting something a lot bigger and a much
well,
more bigger reaction, George. I don't know if you feel the same way.
well, I think that's true. Definitely in Texas, that's true. They wanted a larger crowd, but I think they also showed, without planning it, I think that they all showed that these are not organic. Um, these
Right.
are not grassroots, unplanned, uh,
Right.
or organized events. That these are very well coordinated events, which is another issue. That on Wednesday there was an initial protest here in San Antonio, and I literally had to argue with a CBS reporter who said, "How can you say that these are coordinated?" Well, how dumb do you have to be to not see that they are? I mean, the same sayings, the same placards.
Right.
It was very, very obvious that these are very, very well coordinated, very well planned events. These are
Oh,
not
I agree.
something spontaneous and
No.
grassroots.
No, they're not. They're not because it's just too organized. It's just too organized. But I think the bottom line, George, and what has to trouble Democrats is that I don't think they had the impact, the political impact that they thought it was going to have. Now, part of that is that the Israelis sort of spoiled
Yeah.
the marches when they attacked Iran. I mean, that took over the front page. The military march also, the parade probably took over. But I just think that, I don't believe, and again, I don't have any numbers to prove it. Maybe the numbers will come out and the polling data will come out. My gut feeling is that I don't think this was the success they thought it was going to be, for the simple reason that I think people are smart enough to know, George, that we
Yeah.
don't have a king, that we don't have a king. And when you see people marching in the streets with foreign flags,
The
and
optics to all of it was very poor.
I
It was
think
very
so.
poor.
I think so. I think the optics were
I
horrible.
mean, for America, for normal, and I will use again that phrase that I use
Yes.
quite often, for normal American citizens, it didn't look good.
No, I think you're right. I think you're exactly right. And people look at this thing and they go, wait a minute, what is going on here? So you don't want to be sent back to your country, but you want to march with a flag from your country. Well, that, most people, that doesn't add up. So I'm
That
going to
doesn't
guess,
fly.
George. Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't fly. You're exactly right. But I think for overall, I'm going to guess that a lot of serious Democrats looked at this thing and said, you know what? We're not helping ourselves with these things. This is not helping us overcome the electoral challenges that we have. That's just my feeling, especially here
Yeah.
in Texas. And we're going to talk about Texas next. But there's now I guess, a sense maybe you've heard something about this, that the Democrat primary in 2026 is going to be between Beto O'Rourke and
Colin Allred.
Colin Allred. Now, both of them,
Two men of color.
yes, two men of color. Yeah, especially Beto. And we love those. We love men of color like Beto. But I mean, looking at that, and again, we need to be honest and say that the Republican primaries could be very controversial too, and it could divide the party significantly. That's one of the fears that I have.
Definitely, the Republican one is going to be political.
Right.
It's going to be a political battle. The Democrat one, if it's between these two characters, it's going to be more of a theater than it is politics.
But politically, I mean, they both know what they have to do. I mean, they're going to have to, in order to cross 50% and defeat one of the Republicans, whether it's Cornyn or Paxton, they're going to have to somehow get over 50%. Neither
Correct.
one of them was able to do it the last time around. I mean, especially Colin Allred, who I think got to 45 or something like that. Beto O'Rourke did get to 48%, but that's the high mark.
The
first. When he ran for governor, he got stuck in the mid 40s again. But my point is that these guys have to know that if they want to win, they're going to have to move to the right, because that's where the electorate is. And so what kind of a primary are they going to run? Now, you mentioned
it'll be very, very interesting.
Well, before the show, you mentioned something very interesting. We were talking about this, and you said you think they may both double down on going left so that they can get the turnout or win. I mean, well, you may have to double down left if you want to win the primary, George.
Well, I'm not sure about, doubling down. I think that they might go left for the money, not so much for the votes.
Okay,
the money that comes in from outside Texas comes for hard left people. The woman that ran for mayor here in San Antonio, she ran to the left. She ran to the left. She got tons and tons of money, and unfortunately, she had the better organization. And but that's where she ran. I mean, everybody was expecting her to respect the middle. Because I mean, San Antonio's Hispanic population has moved so much to the middle now, but she didn't. There were the number of voters that came out was only in the mid-teens.
Oh wow!
Which favors the radicals, yes. And so she ran to the. So I would conceive. I mean, if they're going to want money. I think they're going to have to run to the left. If they're going to want votes, they're going to have to run to the middle.
Right.
Now, that puts them in a predicament. That really puts them in a predicament.
Right. And that's the reality of the party. You're exactly right. If they want to have the kind of money that it takes to compete in a state like Texas with all the different television markets, you're right. They're going to have to bring in a lot of money from California and from places. And that will force them to say a bunch of idiotic things that they will regret during the campaign. But do you think it's going to happen? Do you think it's going to actually happen? that because one of these two guys is going to be burned up. Whoever loses is probably going to be burned up forever as far as politics. I mean, I
don't
don't
know.
see,
I don't know. I mean, if they Democrats have a tendency now to uphold ridiculous leftists. Look at Elizabeth Warren. I thought after her being caught for lying about being an American Indian, that would be the end of it. But no, she's still going very, very strong.
right.
Jasmine Crockett, the crazy things that she says, and she's going very, very strong.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I mean, I think these two characters, it's become a living now, because every time that they run, remember, they make money.
Right.
And so, neither one of them is holding real office or has a real profession. So this is their profession, and this is how they make money.
Right. Well, that's a good point. That's a good one. We'll see what happens. It could energize the Democrat primary and get a much larger turnout. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Let me mention that the president of Mexico apparently met with the Assistant Secretary of State, Deputy Secretary of State in Mexico City, and complained a little bit about these raids, saying that, you're arresting or you're deporting some good working people. And nobody questions that they work hard, okay? I've never questioned that they work hard. But that's not really the issue. The issue is not how hard they work. The issue is how many of them have deportation letters, how many of them have been deported and come back to the country, how many of them, those are, in my opinion, much more important issues than whether or not they work.
It's all about the money.
But that's my point, that I think in the case of the president of Mexico, she realizes how important these remittances are.
Yeah, exactly.
And she realizes that these people in the United States at least can send money back. But if they go back to Mexico, they're not going to be able to send money back. And I think a lot of it has to do with remittances, George. That's my feeling.
Yeah, no, I think you're perfectly right. The history of the border, the whole border region has been the Mexican-U.S. border region has been about the exchange of money and labor, not so much the exchange of goods, trade, but strictly the exchange of money and labor. Right. That's how it always has been, and that's what it's always been about. Right. And the sad situation is that Mexico has never done anything to wean itself from that. Right. And I mean, they've existed under this situation for well over 150 years, and they haven't done anything to build up their own economy so that they don't depend on the United States.
Well, and what's amazing, and I don't think most people realize just how important remittances are for Mexico. You're talking about, depending what number you want to use or what standard you want to use, you're talking anywhere from 3 to 5% of their GDP.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of money.
And that is money, Silvio, that is money that goes not from in an indirect manner, like an exchange of goods within the economy of the country. That is money that comes directly to the hands of poor people.
Right. And it's a subsidy. That's what it is. I mean, and it's somebody up here sending $200 to their mom or whatever. Exactly. The problem is that it is. That's what it is. So, somebody sends $200 to their mom in Mexico. The mom goes out shopping and buys food. Okay. That's just, you're helping, I suppose, whoever she buys food from, or if she pays the rent or whatever. So that is, but it's not the kind of investment that will create jobs in Mexico, which is what they need.
It is a welfare system, and they recognize it. And it's like all welfare systems, it is a dependence on the United States. So therefore, she is scared to death.
Well, she has to be, because
anything about to end that dependency.
Right, because in this reconciliation bill that is being looked at right now, they've already approved a 3.5% tax on remittances. So that means that instead of $100, you're going to get $97. Okay, so that is a big difference. In fact, I saw an economist in Mexico write a report that could cut their GDP by a point or 1.5 points. I mean, that's how big of a impact it is. Just the 3.5%, George. that they're talking about. In this case, if you send people back, then that's an even bigger impact because they're not here to send money. So it is really and you know what's interesting, George? Over 20 years ago, I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine from Mexico, and this came up. This whole thing about the remittances came up at a time when it wasn't as big as it is now. And he said to me, and he was talking about Mexico, he says, we have to cut this because we're creating, like you say, this dependency. And his concern, it's an interesting twist. His concern was that the people up here who were sending that money, the generation that comes after is not going to send the money. In other words, the guy who's here is sending $200 to his mom, let's say, but their son or daughter who is now permanently here, he or she's not going to send $200 to their grandmother.
And that's very, very true. We see that happening. Plus, even more alarming to Mexico and the Democrats is that in the second and third generations of these Hispanics, of these Americans of Mexican descent, because that's what they become,
right.
They no longer care about Mexico. So not only do they quit sending the money, now you see how many of them are in opposition to immigration, to illegal immigration.
Well, that's
so it's a double whammy for these folks.
It is. And you know who also gets hurt by that? The media, the Spanish media.
Yep.
Because the sons and daughters of these people who come here, they don't watch Spanish TV.
Exactly.
They watch American TV. So, you have this situation where, yes, the people who come over, they watch Univision or Telemundo or whatever it may be. But their sons and daughters, and especially grandchildren, I mean, there's a point where the interest in Spanish drops and they would rather watch, the local English news than to watch the local Spanish news. That's another impact too, that as time passes, it has on the population. Well, let me ask you a quick last question here as we are running out of time. We don't have all the details. Well, at least I don't quite have all the details. Maybe you do, of school choice. But how, everything has been set up, as I understand, to begin. How do you actually begin a program like this? Let's say next August, and it's only a couple of months, the parents want to or have to get their kids ready for school. Are those vouchers going to be ready in August, George?
It's I have no idea. I haven't read the specifics on it.
Yeah.
I have spoken to several folks who are in leadership positions in the districts, and there is quite a bit of panic among the low districts. There is one district, South Side District here in San Antonio, that has been in receivership by the state for almost 3 years because it's such a mess.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And they are very, very worried that they're going to have an exodus of people leaving.
Mm-hmm. Right.
On the other hand, some of my other friends that are in the more middle class, affluent districts, they're saying that they don't think that it's going to be that big of an impact to them because a lot of these folks are not going to have the wherewithal to transport their kids, like from south side of San Antonio to the northwest side. So that's going to be an impact. And in my opinion, that's the transportation issue is something that is going to have to be worked out.
Yeah.
If there are kids that want to move,
right,
that want to move out of the district, is there going to be some assistance for them to be able to deliver them out of the district?
It's a good point. I think that, I support the school choice idea, but I think it may take a little long to actually transition.
Yeah.
And maybe 2025 is too premature. Maybe it's more realistic to let's say have a year's time to implement the program, because if you're going to give a family a voucher in let's say August to select the school, well, are the Catholic schools going to be ready, for example, if you are want to send your kids to a Catholic school or a Christian school or a private school? Are they going to be ready to accept? Some of them will be, but a lot of them aren't. So there is a transition to all of this. I mean, I support the idea of school choice, but there is a transition coming.
Correct.
and that's probably what is going to happen. Well, George, I want to thank you as always so much for your time and your knowledge. Did anybody ever tell you that before? Your knowledge, right? And you're probably the only person that I could talk to that can remember Watergate. So that's why I brought it up. Because a lot of other people, the only, it's funny. This is crazy. I actually went to the internet today and I Googled Watergate and I came up with there's a Watergate diet, there's a Watergate salad. So obviously, as time has passed, Watergate is not what it used to be, I guess.
Did you Google No King?
No, you know what? That's a good idea. We got to figure that one out. I will do that.
I guarantee you will see tons of things today about.
Yes, that's probably true. That's probably true. No kings. Somebody's got to come up with a good.
I thought about No Queens.
No queens. Yeah.
No queens.
And I'm kind of surprised. But see, I'm kind of surprised.
And Hillary.
Yeah. But I'm kind of surprised they chose that title, No Kings. I thought that certain elements of the Democrat Party might find that not diverse enough.
Real quick, I was reading some of the liberal publications, what I consider liberal publications, like the Washington Post, and they had interviewed some immigrant from Sweden that had moved to Washington D.C. and he said that the thing that caused him to be frightened was the sight of the robo-dog in the military parade on Saturday.
Oh,
the sight of the robo-dog scared him.
Oh, well, that's a good point. So that's a good point. I wouldn't want to mess with a robo-dog.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, that could be a little tempting. All right, George, have a great week, and promise you another one next week. And
alrighty.
But that school choice is a topic that I think they need to explain a little bit better.
They need to research it. Well, especially how they're going to transport kids back and forth.
Well, that's it. And how are they going to transition? That's really, I support the idea, but I just want to make sure that they have a plan to transition, particularly for parents who their kids are going to be looking for a school or moving or starting school in August.
And the families are not going to move. It's the kid that's going to be
exactly. It's the kid. That's exactly right. So we'll have to figure. You're right about transportation. That could be a real factor, not just in San Antonio, but right here in the Dallas area as well. Yeah. Well, George, have a good week, and we'll talk to you later.
Thank you very much.
All right. Our good friend, George Rodriguez from South Texas, talking about a few things today. The No Kings March, and a few other things. I still believe, and I don't have the numbers to prove this. I'm sure the polling data is going to be coming out soon. But I do believe that this weekend of marches is not going to play well for the Democrats. I just have a gut feeling that the American people are not going to be excited about somebody telling them that we live under a king. That's just not I don't think that's a winning message. I just don't think that's a winning message. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.